Welcome to the Radiant Energy Summit, where you'll learn the top insights and strategies for nurturing and optimizing your energy on all levels of your being. Our guest today is Dr. Jeffrey Thompson. Dr. Thompson is the founder and director of the Center for Neuroacoustic Research in Carlsbad, California, a research center which is actualizing its vision of healing the body, heart, mind, and spirit through the scientific application of sound. Dr. Thompson is considered the world's premier sound healing researcher, brainwave entrainment expert, and high-tech personal transformation innovator, motivator, and futurist. He's a physician, musician, composer, inventor, educator, and author. His work addresses harmony between the body, mind, spirit, and is clinically proven to foster deep personal wellness and expansion of consciousness. He's been a pioneer in the field of therapeutic sound since the early 80s. He's also worked with NASA and the JPL with plasma wave audio recordings, which are wild, by the way, from Voyager 1 and 2, and have researched their effects on subconscious mind for healing and emotional release. His audio programs are used with patients before and after surgery and in various oncology infusion departments and clinics. His patented neuroacoustic, vibroacoustic sound chair and sound table are used in medical and mental health clinics, wellness spas, professional and business offices, personal fitness clubs, and homes. He's played an active role in the Complementary Alternative Medicine Research and Therapy Association at Scripps Hospital in San Diego, California. We welcome you, Jeffrey, to our summit today.
You did that flawlessly. Congratulations.
Well, I'm well versed with your work, and this is a dream come true. I mentioned that to you a little earlier because I've studied your work for a long time and have benefited tremendously from your audio meditations.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. So, what started you in the field of sound healing?
That's a loaded question. Before I went to chiropractic school, I was an artist and a musician and a filmmaker. I have a Bachelor of Fine Arts degree. So you never can tell what's going to happen to you. I had my oldest and best friend. His brother went to chiropractic school, talked him into going, and he talked me into going. After I got into practice, I realized that I could do something I always wanted to do, and that's make an album as a composer and a musician. So I went down and took my first bank loan, bought the most cutting-edge equipment at the day. That was, in those days, a brand-new keyboard had just come out with something called digital synthesis. That was the Yamaha DX7.
Yes.
And I bought that, professional mixing boards and reel-to-reel recorders and special effects equipment, and packed it into my spare room, made a recording studio in my spare room. And then my wife at the time wanted me to work on her back because, of course, I was a chiropractor. So I popped open my portable table in my spare room like I always did, and she's on this table, and all of a sudden I realized I've got somebody on a table in a recording studio.
Yeah.
So it was kind of like, I wonder if I could make a chiropractic adjustment with a sound wave.
Oh, is that a cool... Boy, that's inception right there, huh?
And that little decision is, like for all of us, a small, innocuous decision that you don't think about much at the time opens a major new doorway in your whole life.
Oh.
You know? So I did some testing, and I found this frequency for her fifth lumbar, put a speaker on her back, and a couple of minutes later, it was adjusted with a sound wave, and she was fine, and my life was changed.
Oh, my gosh. So how did you find the frequency? This is amazing.
At the time, I was using a stress monitoring technique that monitors muscle strength.
Yeah.
So if you've ever been to an office that does muscle testing,
yes,
it's kind of based on the same idea.
Got it. Okay.
So here's the idea. There is a organic biological intelligence inside of you that knows how to grow your body out of two cells, differentiate the tissues, and make them all run on automatic without you thinking about it. That's the autonomic nervous system. It has sympathetic, parasympathetic. Anyway, it's the internal physician program. It knows what's wrong with you. It's got a list. So if I find a muscle in your body that's got good strength, it's normal, it's got good strength, and I start pushing on your fifth lumbar, in her case she had this fifth lumbar problem. Let's say that the fifth lumbar is rotated to the right, and the right facet joint is pinched and causing pain. And I go and I start pushing with my thumb on the spinous process, the bump on the back of your spine. I start pushing it to the right and to the left. If I push it to the right, I just made a bad situation worse, right? It's already rotated to the right too far. I'm pushing it to the right, and it's further compressing the joint, firing new signals to the brain. The brain analyzes all signals that come to it in terms of, is this good for me, or is this neutral, or is this bad? And if it's the slightest amount bad, the body mobilizes its defenses to see if its life is being threatened. And when it does that, it diverts its attention from the muscle that was just a second ago strong and pays attention to the low back to see if its life is threatened. So the muscle appears to get weak. Actually, the muscle loses its ability to lock.
Yes.
It's not really a strength test. It's whether the microfibers in the muscle tissue can reach their end plates and lock up. All of a sudden, I've got this strong muscle. I push on the vertebra to the right, and the muscle gets weak. That proves to me that, yes, the vertebra is rotated to the right too far, and I'm just making it worse. So while I've got this in place, pressure on the fifth lumbar with the weak muscle, I can play a tone on my keyboard and see if it does anything. Let's say I start with middle C. Nothing happens. C sharp. Nothing happens. D, the muscle's getting some strength back. D sharp, much stronger. E, weaker. Back up to D sharp and start microtuning. Now, this is the cool thing about these rock and roll keyboards from a music store. They're actually extremely sophisticated tone generators.
Yes.
I can tune between C and C sharp by 100 steps with a digital readout. So I can add one division of sharp out of 100 to D sharp. D sharp plus 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, until the muscle is 100% strong. And the only thing that is going to neutralize the body's stress response with the weak muscle is to give it what it needs to fix it at the same time. So the two cancel each other out. And this D sharp plus 15 cents, which makes the muscle 100% strong again, is the frequency I used for the fifth lumbar vertebra. Put a speaker on her back, played it for a few minutes, and it worked.
Just so cool.
I hope you followed that little explanation. It's
totally.
So the idea that we can basically get a readout from the body's brain through stress responses that we can monitor. And we can monitor a stress response by what it does to muscle strength throughout the body.
Yes.
Gives us a quick and easy tool to find out what's going on in the body. Have the body tell us what it knows is going on. So that was kind of basically how I did that. And then I had, I was working in the largest holistic health center in Virginia. That's where my first 8 years of practice. I got hired along with another greenhorn straight out of school in this huge clinic. And the whole idea there was, let's pack as many holistic therapies under one roof as possible. And everybody who comes in goes through the most complete exam you ever heard of, structural and cranial and biochemical and organ and glandular and biomagnetic and everything we could think of, and then fix everything you find and people get better. And it was in that amazing kind of atmosphere that I was able to bring this discovery into that clinic and start working it with patients. And at that time, I was like 40 patients a day, so it was a big practice. Wow. And I had a lot of patients to research this effect with. And then it was cranial work, because when you do craniosacral work and cranial work, many of those cranial bones are very difficult to get to. You can't actually touch them directly. You have to put your finger inside somebody's mouth in a gag reflex area that's very sore. In this way, I could resonate individual cranial bones and make them float in a state of resonance, and that would disconnect them from the bones around them, with the next inhale, exhale. So that's where it really shined, was cranial work with sound waves. And then the next step was, let's see if we can affect organ function or gland function. And we had a blood lab in this clinic for doing nutritional studies. And so I could see somebody coming in with a liver problem, liver enzymes are not normal, and fix it with sound waves.
Fabulous.
So it was like a science fiction movie or something.
Yeah.
And I couldn't even believe what was going on here. And as time went on, the sound work began to outshine everything else I was doing. And by definition, I was doing everything. This was a huge holistic center with all kinds of different techniques. And then I had a bright idea. It was, wait a second, the brain. The brain is an organ. What if we could normalize the brain function with a sound wave? Because the brain's duty is to tell all the other systems what to do.
Yeah.
So I set some experiments up to do that. And when I saw that work, that was it. I realized I think I need to be doing this full time. Nobody's doing this. I need to do this.
Yeah.
And it was a crux point for me because I'd now been in this clinic for 8 years, and I was very successful now. In that first year of practice, the guy who owned this center got into a bad investment deal and was forced into bankruptcy. So the other young associate and I bought the whole clinic from the bankruptcy court for a song and a dance, and I ended up with the largest holistic health center in the whole state in my lap in my first year of practice. So that's the universe saying yes to you or something.
Yes, correct. Yeah.
Sold everything, sold the practice, sold my house, and moved to California and established this research center and a clinic. And it's been quite a ride. That was 1988 when I moved to California and started this center. In that mix of doing physical work, so I kind of call that neuroacoustic work, where we're using frequencies to cause a physical effect in your physical body, resonating your body like a wine glass.
Yes.
And various parts of the body are different body densities and respond to different octaves and different harmonics. For instance, physical sensation of vibration sense is separate from hearing. It's 4 skin sensors buried in different depths of the skin that are nerve bundles that communicate to this posterior spinal cord up to neurons in the brainstem. And that network of nerve bundles is sensitive to vibration frequencies between 0.3 hertz and 500 hertz. So as far as the body is concerned, vibration sense is 0.3 to 500 hertz. Anything above that you hear, but you don't feel. And then hearing is between 20 hertz and 20,000 hertz. So there's an overlap between those two systems, between 20 hertz and 500. So anything that I can hear between 20 hertz and 500 hertz, I hear it and I feel it at the same time.
Yes.
And those two systems synchronize up their activity. So therapeutically, I want to make sure that I always have a lot of frequencies and instrumentation in that sound range. So automatically I get synchronicity of the vibration sensors and the hearing centers in the brain. Because the work has evolved over time, so it becomes more and more important to synchronize various systems together. The body is set up in actually very simple rules. You know, as far as the body is concerned, rule number 1 is survive at all costs. And it has all these mechanisms in place to mobilize my energy to fight for my life. That's the sympathetic nervous system turning on and the fight or flight response. And then rule number 2 is do no self-harm. And don't waste your energy. Get the most work with the least amount of energy expended.
Right. That's the way the brain works, too. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's an ecological universe, and I'm a child of the universe, right? So everything is trying to get the most work with the least amount of energy. That's pretty much it. Everything can be evaluated in the body in how it obeys those rules. So, like I was saying before, my five senses are stuck into the world just to see if my life is being threatened from a physical standpoint. And all the information coming from all those five senses is constantly being evaluated in terms of, is this good for me? Is this neutral? Is this bad? And if it's the slightest degree bad, this could possibly be a threat to my life, but I don't know yet, so I'm going to mobilize all my defenses just to make sure. So we can guarantee that the body will have a fight or flight response if there's a negative input from somewhere until it can be evaluated. And then we can take advantage of that, because when the body has this alarm response, all kinds of things happen, right? The galvanic skin response, pupillary dilation, adrenals fire, blood pressure goes up, all your muscles get weak, and all this kind of things.
Yes.
We can monitor. Back when I was still in Virginia, and I had this recording studio, and I started making music, started working on this first album, and I think this is somewhere around 1982 or something. Parallel work with using these sound waves and affecting body function was shifting my brain around about what kind of music I was going to be composing. And I began to think more of, could I combine cutting-edge science with music together to create healing music of some kind that would have an effect on the brain? And my thinking was going there because of my work with children and women's problems, in particular, say women's problems with menstrual cycle problems. Women who had irregular menstrual cycle problems, because this little gland inside of the center of your brain called the pineal gland is sensitive to light-dark cycles, and it times my body clocks to pulses in the universe. And there's all kinds of pulses going on in the world that we're not aware of. Some of them are light pulses, like the length of the day. Some are nighttime pulses, like the full moon, new moon cycle, which happens 28 and a half days. So human female menstrual cycle ovulates during a certain phase of the moon and locks that ovulation every 28 and a half days you have your next period. And if we get out of step with the moon and the moon phase, then you'll have more than one period a month, or you'll skip months with your period, so it becomes irregular as your body tries to get back in step. And with those women, we could pretty much cure about 40% of the women I saw just by fooling the pineal gland into thinking the full moon was still shining through the window by burning a little teeny tiny light bulb over by the window at nighttime.
Really?
During the 2 weeks of the new moon when there's no moon out. So you still have a little light there, fooling the pineal into thinking the full moon is still out, and changing the tempo of the relationship between the pineal and the body clock and the moon phase. I did enough women, I had a huge practice, 40 patients a day, so I seen a lot of women, and over 8 years it was thousands of patient visits. It became apparent to me that the moment that you were conceived, sperm and egg come together, a lot of different cosmic events get stamped into your essence. And one of those is the moon phase. Wherever the moon phase was at the moment you got conceived stamps your time clock. So eventually later, when your ovaries come online, and your first ovulation will be on the same moon phase that you were conceived. And if it gets messed up, then there's ways to fix that holistically. So anyway, with that in mind, that I could change the clock with a light pulse, changing a light pulse, I'm thinking, could I do it with a sound pulse? And so I started thinking, could I affect brainwave function with a sound pulse? There had been evidence from the U.S. Navy affecting brainwave function with light pulses, and I was aware of that. So I'm trying it with sound pulses. So I started building sound pulses in the music, timing the speed of those sound pulses to a brainwave speed. So if I can cause a sound pulse to be pulsing at a brainwave speed in the music, I wanted to see if your brainwaves would change their function and lock on to this external sound pulse.
Yes.
Because my body clocks time themselves to the world to obey rule number 2. Get the most work with the least amount of energy expended. So it saves energy to time my body clocks to world events that are already pulsing than to invent my own pulse moment by moment from scratch. Because I was designing my own instrument sounds on this cool keyboard, the DX7, which gave you the ability to dream up fantasy instrument sounds that you'd never heard before and create them from scratch. I could go inside those instrument sounds that I was making and manipulate the harmonic structure and untune the harmonic structure within the instrument sound and create a pulse. It's a phase modulation technique for brainwave entrainment. And just about that time, I bought a funny little EEG machine from Edmund Scientific, and I started doing some primitive EEG research with this little device in my clinic to see if I could change the brainwave function. And sure enough, that wasn't a problem, really. So that first soundtrack that I put out, that was called Isle of Sky, and that was 1986. And it was, I was kind of doing it from the standpoint of you can't go your whole life without having done that. Even if I give those, tapes away for Christmas presents for the next 20 years,
yeah,
at least
right.
I did it, And it was a hit. So within 6 months, that tape was taken up by all 15 New Age music distributors in the country, and it was a hit.
Wow.
I was given some kind of award by the American Hypnotherapy Association for the first soundtrack for brainwave hypnosis. It was like another one of those examples of the universe saying yes to do. It was a real surprise to me to see the response. But then later I found out that other people were doing brainwave entrainment soundtracks, like the Monroe Institute, which was 4 hours down the road from me, in Virginia also. And then I discovered, where all this came from. It was a article in Scientific American in December 1973 called Auditory Beats in the Brain by a Mount Sinai Hospital researcher named Gerald Oster.
I've read it.
So you can go to the Scientific American website and you can get that. You can download that, magazine, that article. So in that article, he blew the lid off this whole idea of brain entrainment. That's where it all came from. And he was a scientist, so he was using man-made sine waves. So first of all, he hooked people up to EEG machines, see where your brain waves are, and then started creating what's called a monophonic beat, a single sound source pulsing, like a drum beat is a good example of that. And since then, of course, I've researched all this very heavily, the shamanic drum beats and Native American drum beat patterns, but particularly the shamanic drum beat patterns that change consciousness. The speed of that drum beat is about 4.5 to 5 hertz, and that's a theta brain pulse. So you're pounding a drum at a brainwave speed and changing people's brainwaves and putting them into a trance state. So theta is where your brain goes when you're dreaming. So that means I can pound a drum, and your brain waves will go from beta, awake, at about 15 or 20 hertz, and slow down through alpha, down into theta, and then go deeper into theta down to 5 hertz and match the drum beat. Mm-hmm. And that means we can take you from an awake state to a dream state without going to sleep first, and that's a classic definition of a trance state.
Yeah.
So that's essentially what Gerald Osler was doing, creating a kind of a drum beat sound, watching your brain waves change from on an EEG from wherever they were and travel to the speed of this drum beat, lock onto it. And if he speeds the drum beat up or slows it down, your brain waves follow. And that's called a frequency following response. And essentially, if my brain waves follow your lead, I'm hypnotized. That's what hypnosis is.
Right.
When you follow my lead, it's more like a musical sound space, a beatific ambient musical sound space that's not going anywhere but here.
And part of the reason is because the brain is otherwise picking it up, thinking, I know what that sounds like.
The brain is always trying to congratulate itself and get a reward. So the congratulation is, oh, here we've got Western music. I've got an introduction stanza, and then that goes to a few chord changes that I'm familiar with, and it comes to a chorus, and then it goes to a B, and then it goes back to A, B, chorus, A, B, chorus, A, B, chorus, conclusion. And because I know those rules really well, my brain is engaged. It's kept engaged by anticipating, see, I told you so. It's doing exactly what I predicted. And, oh, here comes the next one, and here comes the chorus, and, right? So as long as I can reward myself, my brain is engaged.
Right.
Then there's the whole thing of primordial sounds. So those are always in all of these soundtracks. So the idea behind that is it's an objective sound, a sound that would have the same effect on anybody who heard it, no matter what language you speak or culture you're brought up with or what sex you are. And so an example of that would be womb sounds. All of us have had pretty much exactly the same experience in the womb for 9 months, right? We're floating in body temperature amniotic fluid. It's like a float tank. At 16 to 24 weeks, when the nervous system develops enough that all the 5 senses come online for the first time, there's no collection of data from the eyes or the nose or the mouth. You're in the dark, and your nose and mouth are filled with fluid. But the physics of acoustics, sound travels through a fluid 5 times better than it does through air.
Right. So
that means the only thing any of us experience for 9 months is vibration sense in our skin and sound waves. So we're initiated by sound for 9 months.
Amazing, isn't it?
All of us, right? We're brothers and sisters in our initiation in this. So to me, there's no mystery that all the major religions on the planet have as their genesis story. In the beginning was the word or the sound or the om or whatever. And that's what we experienced. The first thing we ever experienced was the sound.
Yes.
And that has a deep impact. And at one point I started thinking, let's reproduce that. Let's as a physician who knows my anatomy and physiology really well, and a sound engineer and a composer, let's bring those two worlds together and let's recreate as perfectly as possible what the womb soundscape sounded like to me as a fetus, not as an adult from the outside listening with a stethoscope. And so we can kind of pick that apart. We know that there would be the swishy, watery sounds because I'm floating in this fluid, kind of the sound you would get if you're at the bottom of a swimming pool. And then there would be the placental artery sounds that are thumping right into your belly button, right? Mm-hmm. And then there would be the mother's heart sounds, the mother's respiratory sounds from the diaphragm, which is just above the womb. Then there would be the large small intestinal sounds, and those are kind of gloopy, bloopy sounds that are supposed to be there. They're supposed to be making noises. And all of these things would be in various three-dimensional positioning. So I recreated that with a 3D soundtrack, so everything was in its correct position. And when I played that soundtrack, it just didn't sound right. I'm expecting goosebumps, and I'm not getting goosebumps. And I thought about it, couldn't figure it out. That night at 2:30 in the morning, I have a dream. And this is how it works for me. I've got a pad next to my bed. So in the dream, the epiphany was sound waves have size. C sharp in the second octave on a piano has a sound wave that's 1 foot long. And C sharp 1 octave lower is a 2 foot long sound wave and a 4 foot long sound wave. And the sound waves get shorter and shorter and shorter the higher up you go to keyboard, the higher the frequency. So that means that my perception of tone, of which octave a tone is very dependent on the size of the sound wave versus the diameter of my eardrum. It's a relationship of size. And the eardrum of a fetus is extremely small. It's so small you have to look through a microscope to see it. Right? Small little body, small little head, small little ear, small little eardrum. And therefore the size of my mother's heart, which is about both fists tight together, thumping and thumping, the sound waves coming out of that heart compared to the size of the diameter of the fetus eardrum would make the fetus hear the sound beat as something huge.
Yes.
Right? I mean, so if you blew the heart and the fetus both up together, parallel, and got them bigger, so that the fetus was the size of an adult, how big would that heart be?
Oh, wow.
It would be about the size of an 8x10 room. And what kind of a sound would that heart make? It would be a big, slowed down, boom, boom, boom,
Yes. Plus the echoing, that reverberation, that
throughout your body.
Yes.
So that's what I did. I realized, so at 2:30 in the morning, I'm bolt upright in bed going, I know what to do. I know what's missing. So now I have to run down to my recording studio. So I don't have a living room. I've got a recording studio. I don't have a dining room. I've got a piano. So I'm down here screwing around. I realize all these sounds, they all have to be slowed down by a few octaves. Actually, there's a formula. How much do you have to slow the sounds down so it would sound correct to that small of an eardrum? And once I did that, magic. That was the goosebumps.
Wow.
And then I'm realizing this needs to be in the clinic. This has got therapeutic value.
Yes.
Taking a person back to their womb experience at a gut level by having them be on this special sound table with the sound waves, the low frequencies coming right into your body. Yeah. And headphones where the 3D thing is playing through your body and through the headphones. We're trying to stack the deck in our favor for a favorable outcome. We're trying to make this magic door open.
Yes.
By using science, the science of sound. So because think about it, in the womb, it was me and God. And all my needs get met and I'm surrounded by love, and I have to do nothing. And when was the last time you got that experience, right? Essentially, all of us are trying to get that experience back.
Yes, right.
We're trying to get it through love and through sex and through food and through entertainment and through hiking in the forest and meditating, and we're trying to get that experience back. It's an important experience. And essentially, whoever I was in the womb is exactly who I am now. Same person, minus all the experiences, right? Minus being beat up by life.
Well, which includes
all the good stuff.
Which includes if something in the womb didn't go right, if there were sounds that the child did hear, or if the resonance wasn't quite right, or if the experience of coming out into this world, any number of those things could disturb that resonance.
Correct. So now we've got the 80-20 rule again.
Yes.
Because 20% of people have trauma in the womb.
Yeah. 80%, did you say?
I don't think it's quite 20%, but...
Oh, 20%.
80% of all of us have a good experience in the womb.
Okay.
20% have some problem. There's fetal distress. There's a mother's an alcoholic or a drug user or beat up by her husband or falls down the stairs or, you know what I mean? There's a complication that creates a trauma and a stress in the womb.
Yeah.
Sub-psychological stuff. The mother wants an abortion.
Yeah.
You think the baby doesn't know that?
Oh, boy.
And I deal with this. I mean, I deal with patients. This is what it boils back to in some people.
Yes.
It's part of the mix of their story. So if I can go back, whether you've had a good experience or not, let's say that you had a bad experience, and I do this womb thing therapeutically in my clinic with special sound frequencies that affect your nervous system and put you in a place where you can deal with it, it gets dealt with.
Yep.
From the inside out, not from the outside in.
Yeah.
So that brings us to where this work has gone in the last 25 years, and that's with this special heart rate variability system that I've got. And it's a special heart rate variability system I have a patent on. I worked with a heart rate variability company to create a special one for me called a real-time heart rate variability. So let me explain a little bit about heart rate variability. It's a medical monitoring system. It's like a gold standard in medicine. And why it is because it's taking heartbeat information, the electrical heartbeat information, and doing different math to it, and popping up different screens to see that show us the sympathetic, parasympathetic nervous system live on a computer screen.
Yes.
And the sympathetic, parasympathetic is the master control system that tells all systems what to do. So essentially, the big holistic idea is, aside from the fact that there's this biological intelligence that knows how to heal me, how to design my body and make it work, and then heal the things that are wrong with it and rebalance them on the fly. It's its daily program. If I have symptoms coming from some part of my body, back pain, muscle problem, digestive problems, liver problem, meridian imbalances, it's not their fault. No system in the body works autonomously. Mm-hmm. Every system in the body only does what it's coordinated to do by central command. Somebody has to be the conductor of this orchestra. Otherwise, nobody plays in tune together, and then it becomes a mess.
Yes.
And that's essentially my take on what health and disease is. That, from a holistic standpoint, the internal physician program should be doing its job and balancing things out on the fly so nobody gets so far awry that it begins to fire off alarm signals. Please pay attention to me, do something. Is compounded by the fact that when I do get the smoke alarms going off and I go to the medical doctor, they give me a smoke alarm suppression pill.
Oh, that's well said.
Right? So now I can't hear the alarm anymore. Yeah, or do an operation and remove the batteries from the smoke alarm so I can't hear it anymore. Meantime, the house is on fire.
Great metaphor. Wow.
Now if I'm getting these signals from various parts of my body that there's something going on, what is preventing the internal physician program from doing its job? That's the problem. The problem is it should be doing this job, and it's not able to do this job because something's blocking it.
Yes.
And various holistic approaches all have different answers to what do we do about removing the blockages from the internal forces coming forth to heal me. You know, they say God does the healing and the doctor collects the bill, right? So that means that that for me as a holistic physician, and for you as patient who drags your body in here for me to do something for. That is an incorrect way of how we relate together. Really, I'm not the physician at all. I'm the physician's assistant.
Correct.
And under the hood of your body is the physician.
Yep.
And who's riding on top of that ocean in a little dinghy with a crown on who thinks it's you is your ordinary personality who doesn't have a clue how this system works.
Yeah.
Has to buy an anatomy book to see what's inside.
Right.
Right? So under the hood is this ancient wisdom self that grew the body, knows what to do about it, and is blocked from healing it. And here I am as the physician's assistant who's going to try to help remove the blockages so the internal physician can do its job. And once we can accomplish that, an unfolding takes place from the inside out. As soon as we've re-engaged this internal physician program, it begins immediately to start working on this list that it hasn't been able to get to. A list of priorities based on survival value. And then you might have your first detoxifications. Then you may have emotional releases. You may face the decrystallization of self-defeating belief systems. When it's all coming from the inside out, the body will never do self-harm.
Yeah.
So it always consults itself. I have these toxins in my fat tissues. I need to release them. Let's release them. And the body says, wait a second. Let me just check to make sure everything's going to be all right, that our stress handling system is intact enough to handle this extra stress. And the answer is no. A stress handling system is compromised. So we're going to have to hold that for now. That's why we hold it and don't release it, because the system is too imbalanced to handle the stress of releasing it, so we hold it. So that brings us back to once I had this heart rate variability system in place where I can hook you up and lay you down on my sound table and see your nervous system on my computer screen, I can do some simple tests to see if it's functioning normally. And if it's not, then I can make it function normally with a precisely tuned sound frequency. So here's how that works. When I was in first-year clinic, there was a series of tests that you have to learn, orthopedic neurological tests and clinical tests and stuff like that. So this is a clinical test using a blood pressure cuff. It's called the Ragland test. So the Ragland test is a quick and dirty way of finding out what your stress handling system, if it's normal or not. And so here's the deal. When I'm standing, gravity pulls all the blood out of my head to my feet. So there's barometric receptors in my carotid arteries that signal the pressure drop and initiate an alarm response that starts the fight or flight cascade. And we know very well what that looks like. The sympathetic nervous system turns on, signals my pituitary to send out a hormone to my adrenals that kicks up my blood pressure, respiration, heart rate. Adrenaline suppresses pancreatic function, so I liberate extra glucose to be hyper strong in my muscles. It pulls all the available energy out of my gut, my elimination system, my immune system, and my higher brain centers, puts it in my muscles to fight for my life, because that's number one on the list. Survive at all costs. Mobilize 100% of available energy to fight for my life, because that's the most important thing I can do.
Yeah.
And so in this case, this stress response is going to raise my blood pressure just enough to equalize the gravity stress, pulling the blood out of my head. And so normally we're all walking around with a little bit higher blood pressure and a little bit of sympathetic tone. That's normal. It's called gravity stress. When I lay you down, the gravity stress is now gone. It's easiest to pump the blood on a horizontal plane. So I should get something called baseline, where my blood pressure, respiration, and heart rate reach their lowest level within 3 minutes. So the Ragland test starts you laying down and then watches what happens to your blood pressure when you stand up. I created a new version of that called the reversed Raglan test. Nobody uses it but me because I'm a strange guy. So in the reverse Raglan test, you're going to lay down, I hook you up, and now I can see your sympathetic nervous system and parasympathetic on my computer screen. I should see sympathetic high from gravity stress, and I should see it collapse down to zero stress in the system. That's called homeostasis.
Right.
Where sympathetic, parasympathetic are now equalized, and neither one of them is pulling energy from my body for some purpose. All the energy comes back to my reservoir, and my body immediately starts working on its list. Daily maintenance list, healing list, rebuilding list, detoxification list. That's the way I should be. I should be living in a state of homeostasis where I'm working on my list, unless my life feels threatened and I have to mobilize my energy. After that is over, it all comes back. Push in the clutch, homeostasis, energy back in my court, working on my list. Or if I eat, parasympathetic turns on, mobilizing my energy to my gut, to my elimination system. Energy is kind of utilized. And when that is over, it comes back, pushes in the clutch. Energy comes back to my reservoir. I work on my list. And so what I'm seeing, and I've now been hooking up every patient for the last 26 years, so that's thousands of patient visits. When I lay a person down on their back, after 3 minutes, after 5 minutes, after 10 minutes, the sympathetic is still on. And this is a classic clinical finding of adrenal stress overload, where a persistent sympathetic tone, a runaway fight or flight response that's locked into a vicious cycle that never stops.
Yeah.
It means you're burning up all your resources, and your energy is always spoken for.
Right.
And that means that your body's never working on its daily maintenance list. And that means that all those things that should be maintained throughout the day, every week, every month, every year, every decade, is not being attended to. And so systems are starting to break down. My gut, my elimination system, my immune system, my higher brain centers are offline, essentially. I can't digest my food properly. I can't eliminate toxins properly. My immune system is compromised, so I'm starting to catch things. My brain doesn't work. I've got problems with my memory and concentration. So I go to Starbucks every day. This is a persistent thing. I'd say 99% of all the people I've seen in 26 years, that's the condition.
Wow.
And I've got a scientific mind. I'm looking at this data going, this can't be right. There's got to be something wrong with my machine. You know, every person who walks in off the street can have the same problem, right? I mean, granted, yeah, there are people coming off the street because they're patients. They've got a problem, and I'm the witch doctor at the end of the trail, so I get the weirdest cases you've ever seen, where everybody else has failed, you know. Granted, yes. But after a while, even statistics wouldn't agree with, you know, that many people having the same problem. And I started to realize that what's happening is the 21st century is what's happening.
Yes.
My body was designed for an environment of 70,000 years ago. I wake up in the morning with the sun, and I grab my spear, and I go search for breakfast, and I see some rabbit, and he sees me, and we both have this alarm response, and we run around. And if I can endure longer, I get the rabbit. Now I've got breakfast. Come back, skin the rabbit, make some stew, pick some berries. That's my workday.
Right.
So teleport that poor guy into the 21st century and see what happens.
Yeah.
Where it's alarm clocks
Yeah.
and traffic jams and fumes to a job that doesn't pay you enough money, where you're working for a boss with the emotional development of a 3-year-old, and then it's home for a fast dinner and 7 o'clock news to relax while you watch the world burn.
The toxins in the air, the EMF.
You understand what I'm saying here? And
totally.
that's not even taking into account that we've got thousands of electromagnetic channels, AM, FM, shortwave, shortwave 1 and 2, military frequencies, microwave, cell phones, fumes, junk food, additives. It's like insane. So really what's happening is the body was designed for a sprint, and it's living in a marathon.
Yeah.
It's living in an impossible situation for the way the body's designed. So what the body does is invent a scheme to survive, because that's what the body does best. Rob Peter to pay Paul. Baling wire and duct tape. Go for it anyway, right? So how the body has decided to survive is partially by momentum, which means I'm going to race my engine and bullnose my way through stress with momentum. It's the same way I want to get to the top of a big hill in my car. Part of my strategy is build up some speed when I hit that hill. So I'm already going. And I'm not going to be inspired to pull over to the side of the road halfway up that hill, get a good night's sleep. So what do we end up with in the Western world? An unimaginable epidemic of chronic insomnia.
Yeah.
170 million people can't sleep.
Wow.
Why? Well, because your body is not going to allow you to get into the deepest stage of sleep, delta sleep, where it's the most difficult to wake up, where you're the most vulnerable if you feel that your life is threatened. Your body won't let you get to a stage of sleep where you can't wake up if there's a noise in the room. And delta sleep is where physical recuperation takes place, so it's a double whammy. I'm not working on my list throughout the day. All my energy is spoken for because I'm running a fight or flight response. I'm burning up all my resources. And to me, it's a testament to the resiliency of the beautiful design of the human body that it can do this for 30 or 40 years.
Yeah.
Before all hell breaks loose, right? Before you blow a gasket. And in the Western world, the gaskets are heart attack and stroke. You finally blow a gasket. And that divides the population into two general categories. One category can keep this up for 30 or 40 years and blow something, and the other category can't. They don't have a robust constitution that can keep that up. So what happens is the stress handling system collapses. And now those are the people who have anxiety attacks and PTSD and agoraphobia and nervous disorders, and they don't want to leave the home. They don't want to check the mail. It might be a bill. They don't want to answer the phone because it might be a salesperson. I mean, and they start self-protection techniques to inoculate them against any new unknown kind of thing that could be a stress, because they've got nothing left. That's the work that I do with PTSD, and soldiers come back and they've got their whole stress handling system completely blown.
Yeah,
it's not there anymore. But so now that I've got you laying here on this table, and I can see that your sympathetic nervous system is on and it's not budging. And I know that there's a sound frequency that will, for some reason, make it push in the clutch. Even if you've been running this program for 30 years, I can make it disengage with a sound wave. And it blows my mind that I can even say that. And I don't know what sound wave to use. So I created a sound sweep program that sweeps all sound waves from 50 hertz to 200 hertz through your body through this sound table while I'm observing your nervous system on this computer screen. So as the sound waves start to sweep slowly across different frequencies, and it begins to get to the sweet spot for you, I can see your nervous system beginning to respond to it. I can see this sympathetic response beginning to collapse down. And it collapses down, collapses down, collapses down until it hits that zero stress point, homeostasis point. And then this computer program that I had made for me automatically captures which frequency made that happen. And then it's a therapeutic exercise in playing various octaves of this frequency through your body and through headphones and forcing the clutch to push in. And then give it to you as a soundtrack so you can take it home and start using it every day. Because really what's happening now is we're going to a gym for the autonomic nervous system.
Yeah.
We're retraining it to a normal function. Every time you listen to the soundtrack, the clutch pushes in.
That's
and
great.
every time the clutch pushes in, it gets stronger. We're muscling it up. First, and we're muscling it back up to normal. Then we're going to continue to muscle it up to meet the 21st century.
And in this case, it's not a off-the-shelf. It's customized for your own internal resonances that have been out of resonance.
It's a frequency for you
Yeah.
that causes something very specific to happen in your nervous system.
Right. So it's like a sympathetic nervous system rebalancing, if I have you right.
Right. So now we've got the science and technology of the 21st century is destroying us. And it's the science and technology of the 21st century that also saves us at the same time.
Right. Mm-hmm.
But it's important to not just bring it back to normal, but to muscle it up.
Right.
Because you need a stronger nervous system to handle the 21st century than the one that you were born with.
Mm-hmm. Right. That's part of the divine intelligence that is now speaking through us in different ways than we were originally expecting. But we're here for a reason, and we get it.
When we start to strengthen this system up and buff it up, we're giving new information to the basement of the biocomputer program that designs your body. Because one thing that we know about organic systems is they're magnificently responsive to survival needs in the environment. And for some reason, we haven't been able to shift our biology to meet the 21st century because the 21st century has been coming on too fast. The changes are exponential. It's faster than our biology can meet it. So we need to have some artificial means of bringing our body up to speed. And once we can do that, and the body is up to speed, it's now able to make those biological changes on the inside faster because it's got a template of what it needs to do.
Right. Right. So can you
the ultimate idea here is that that you graduate beyond the need to use this therapy.
Right.
I'm trying to work myself out of a job.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm coming from the right place as a healer, as a physician, as somebody that's here to help you, I'm trying to get you back on your own feet so you can help yourself. You don't need me.
Well, even though, Jeffrey, I haven't sat on your sound table yet, that's the key word, in using the combination of some of your CDs from in the days where we used CDs still, I went from a so-so meditator who was still kind of stressed to someone who could have an experience of no thought in a matter of no time at all. I mean, we're talking within several months at the most. You know, like these Shakti things that we hear so much about from from the Swamis.
Shakti helmet.
And I know for a fact that it was from the experience of using one or two of your CDs, like the Theta Meditation CD or the Awakened Mindset. And so what that says is that if I used to be a really strong left brain guy, very overactive mind, can now go into these little quiet mind states at will without any apparatus, without any audio CDs, etc. Not that I don't use them still, because I do, but I'm talking about at will. That says that almost anybody could do the same, even if they were in fight or flight.
Yeah.
So that's the beauty of it.
That's a good point, because, you know, back a few hundred years ago, or a few thousand years ago, meditation was a completely different ballgame.
Yeah.
Our sense of time was different then. Everything is speeded up to light speed now. It's normal meditation techniques can't meet the onslaught of the 21st century at this point.
For the average person, I completely agree. Yes.
So now we need some new science and technology to do that. So when we've got a meditation soundtrack, first the music has to be right? with this idea of brain entrainment. So when you sit down silently trying to stop the momentum of the 21st century, forget it. The little chatter mind is going, and it's going by momentum. But if I've got a soundtrack that's designed correctly and it's got binaural beats in it for entraining my brain waves, there's a dual thing going on here. Entraining my brain waves is one half, but entertaining the chatterbox mind is the other half.
Right.
I need to have Steven Spielberg in sound because I'm competing with Steven Spielberg on the screen.
In life.
Right? You can pay $12 and go down and see some movie that blows your socks off, and I have to compete with that because now you've got an educated mind in what it requires to entertain you.
Not to mention the stress.
I'd better be up to snuff to create a soundtrack that's going to blow your mind too.
Well, not to mention the stress patterns that we're immersed in on a regular basis that the brain got entrained to.
Yeah. So it's an entertainment kind of idea to keep the chatterbox mind occupied.
Yeah.
And what's buried inside of what it's listening to that's cool are these binaural beats that's entraining it to another state and getting it out of the way. So once again, it's not a mental technique that I have to learn how do I meditate. It's a visceral positioning of me in a certain state with science and technology to turn that off and put me smack dab in the middle of this space I'm trying to get to. And then exercising that in a program where it becomes more of a normal function, a learned neurological response.
Right. And both are appropriate. There's technique and then there's experience. And the technique is trying to bring us to an experience. So both are good.
Right. Trying to land us in an experience. And then at a certain point, we've got what we already know about the classic learned neurological response, like the Pavlov dog response. Ring the bell, he starts to salivate. Now you go and you sit on your pillow and you put the headphones on, but you don't turn the sound on. You imagine what that soundtrack sounded like.
Yep.
And that'll put you there.
And
for some people, just sitting in the room, putting your butt on the pillow and putting headphones on is enough because the anchor of that position with the headphones on is enough elements to bring it about.
Yes. Yeah, in my own experience, when I was using several of your CDs, but especially there was one that you and I just talked about earlier, the Gamma CD.
Yeah.
I got entrained to the inner mind track quite well, and I was there. I was just there. And then there was some interesting occurrences in my life. We had some family sickness go on, and it kind of like took me off my normal resonance. And so it was hard for me to get back into meditation again. And it was really a strange feeling, Jeffrey. But I turned on the inner mind track, let's say about a year or so ago, and I was back there in that state within a matter of minutes, just like what you're talking about, because that muscle memory or that entrainment effect, whatever it is, I remember, it's not that I did, it's that my whole body remembered what that felt like. The brain was a piece of it, but not the lead of it, you know. So
it's riding a bicycle.
Let me ask you a question as we begin to close here. Can you share some stories of people who've made breakthroughs using your audio meditation technologies?
Well, you have to understand that I see crazy situations.
Yes.
People fly in from various places because they've got weird conditions, you know. So there was a little boy from Denmark, 5-year-old boy. His parents called, and we talked to them on the phone. The father, the little boy, and the grandfather flew out here from Denmark. The boy had epileptic seizures, and he's on 3 of the most powerful anti-seizure medications you can take. He wears a helmet all the time. 60 seizures an hour.
Oh.
That's 1 every minute. They're not grand mal seizures. They're blank out seizures where he falls off the chair and hits his head.
Oh,
so every minute he'll go into a blank stare, and kind of go out of his body or something. Anyway, so I do a huge amount of work with children and neurological disorders, and that's been all the way back into Virginia. That was my strong point, that and women's problems. ADD, ADHD, dyslexia, autism, bipolar disorder, depression, epilepsy, things like that. Anyway, so I hooked him up, and I do a lot of testing too. I've tested all your body systems. I still do all that same work that I did back in Virginia. I want to find out where's all the imbalances in all your systems, and then I can help plug as many of those as possible and dump that energy back into the body, because the body's going to need it to heal. And every imbalance in your body holds your energy. It's stuck there. It takes energy to fire pain signals. It takes energy to have a tight muscle. It takes energy to have a meridian out of balance. Some of those tests are neurological tests for right-left hemisphere communication integrity, right? And with an epilepsy kid, those are always all blown. Every indicator test point is usually blown. Right-left hemispheres can't communicate for some reason. And sometimes it's birth trauma, sometimes it's vaccine injury, sometimes it's a concussion, sometimes it's a C-section. That's a whole other discussion about why. So then it's like hooking them up, looking at the nervous system. Sympathetic is just strongly on, it's not moving. Find a frequency that collapses that and returns it to balance. And then do a treatment with headphones on this sound table. And here's another difference. There are a lot of sound tables out there in the market. I have a patent on mine. The sound table has to be right-left stereo separation to match the headphones. Because in the headphones, I've got binaural beats. One ear can't hear what the other ear is hearing. It's forcing the hemisphere synchronicity. And the hemisphere synchronicity is precisely what's wrong. The right-left hemispheres can't communicate across the corpus callosum in an epilepsy kid. And therefore, the brain will work itself up into a brainstorm trying to fix that problem. And it doesn't let go. Because it's the most important thing in the body is the brain, because it's the master control for everything in the system. When the brain's got some imbalance problem, it's the most worried the system can be. And so that's what the epileptic seizure is all about, is the hemispheres trying to struggle to talk to each other and working themselves up into a fit trying.
Wow.
So by putting these headphones on and having not just any two frequencies, but two frequencies closely related to zero stress in the system, where healing takes place and rebalancing and working on my list, I've now set the stage. I've stacked the deck in our favor by pushing the clutch, bringing all the energy back for healing, putting the brain into a position where it can begin to work on its list, and binaural beats that force synchronicity of the hemispheres and light up all those pathways that the brain is trying to light up on its own and is not able to do. In addition, the sound waves are coming through the table into your body, including the binaural beats. That means I need to have the right half of your body match what's coming into the right ear, the right hemisphere.
Yes. And
the left half of the body. It all needs to be synchronized up. So the binaural beats are coming through your body. And the spinal cord is divided right-left. That means the right spinal cord and right vibration sense and the left vibration sense are separated from each other. So I've got this pattern on a sound table where it's split down the middle physically, where you can put your hand down between the split. So we've got headphones for the body. So the right body can't feel what the left body is feeling, and vice versa. It forces the neurons in the brainstem for vibration sense to synchronize up as well. So I saw him twice, and then they flew back, and the rest was all with headphones. And so within the first week, 7 days, his seizures went from 60 an hour to 6 an hour. And in the second week, it was 6 a day. And in the third week, they were gone.
Oh, incredible.
And now it's almost 3 years, and he's been seizure-free ever since. So the biggest problem we had was his medication. And this is the biggest problem I have with patients who come to me on all kinds of different medications.
Yeah, of course. Right.
As soon as your body starts to normalize, the medication all becomes an overdose, and you have new symptom pictures showing up, overdose symptoms. So I have to admonish patients to pull the little data sheet out of your medication and circle the overdose symptoms paragraph, blow it up and stick it on your refrigerator. When you start feeling that way, you're getting better. Go back to your medical doctor. Tell him you're experiencing overdose symptoms and have him start removing this, this medication. Unfortunately, the medical doctors don't listen to that.
Oh, good Lord.
They won't do it. So now you're stuck either finding a holistic medical physician who will listen. And I belong to the American Holistic Medical Association. I've given talks there, presentations there, and there's a national registry list where you can find a doctor in your area who will listen. Or you're forced to withdraw yourself, and then it puts me in an awkward position because it's illegal for me to advise you on your medication.
Right.
Or how to take yourself off of it, So it becomes a problem. Anyway, so the parents were forced to do this on their own. No doctors would listen to them because epilepsy is a lifelong problem. You have to take medication the rest of your life.
Well, according to the old model.
Well, that's still their model.
Yeah.
And so they successfully removed all 3 medications, small little pieces off the pill every week until it was all gone. And he's fine.
That's just incredible. What a great story. What a true story. And it's something that, the reason I wanted to ask you something like that is because then as we close here, it's that we remember stories more than facts. We remember, we have a picture maybe of a headphone. We have a picture maybe of a sound table. We have a picture of like what it would be like for that little boy to suddenly stop like seizing up. My brother had grand mal seizures, so I know what that's like. I mean, he didn't have them as frequently.
Terrifying.
Yeah, he was on phenobarbital and Dilantin all the time.
Yeah.
He probably ended up passing away due to something related to that. So on an up note, what can people do to avail themselves to your work? Like, where do you suggest a person start? Let's say there's 3 pathways or three doors. One, I'm new to this. The second door is I've done meditation before, or I've tried audio CDs. Third one is I'm advanced and I'm ready for more. I know that's a big question.
Nope. No. So over time, after being in practice for decades, it became clear bell curves of people. What kind of soundtracks work best for this and this and this? And
yeah.
So that's where I started creating soundtracks that were generic, that would work for, say, 85% of the people.
Mm-hmm.
I can expand that bell curve a little bit. Anyway, so, but I have a lot of CDs, so it's a bit intimidating when you first go. So we created categories. So when you go to, say, the sound store, there's categories. So let's say I want to heal. You go to the healing category. Or I want to meditate. You go to the meditation category. Or I want to sleep category. So I've got all these categories. So if that's the first step, is go to the sound store, find the category that you're searching for. Let's say it's healing. The CDs that are listed there are listed in order of how you should purchase them.
Mm-hmm.
Buy the one that's the first on the list first.
Okay.
Then work down that list if you want more. So, for instance, the first thing on the list in the healing category is the healing mind system. If I want to boost my creativity, it's the creative mind system. In meditation, there's a host of CDs. So if you're into advanced work, it's advanced brainwaves, gamma, hypergamma, lambda, epsilon. The default mode network is the most cutting edge in neuroscience now. So that's really the most advanced. Probably the most deepest is the Sri Yantra, and that's based on this ancient pattern from India that I mathematically converted into sound. So it's not music. It's 10 sound waves intermingling together that are mathematically precise renditions of the visual diagram, the visual yantra from India.
Yeah.
But it's mind-blowing because it entrains your brainwaves to Sri Yantra consciousness, which was Sri, the highest, the most revered state of consciousness in ancient Indian literature. And why? Why was that the highest state? Because that's the state when I arrive in the present moment and can change the next moment from now to anything I want it to be.
Awesome.
It's where I change my own reality. It's where the quantum field collapses based on my expectation of what the next moment is going to be. So,
wow.
So that's the Sri Yantra. Then I was commissioned by the National Labyrinth Association to do the same thing for the Chartres Cathedral Labyrinth. So I created the sonic labyrinth, mathematically converted that symbol into sound. Then there's the space sounds. So quickly when we talked about the primordial sounds, there's the womb, then there's nature.
Right.
Birds and ocean and wind in the trees. If you slow those down, they cause a under the hood response, a knee-jerk response in your body of relaxation and openness to nature. But then I get these recordings coming back from Voyager 1 and 2 from NASA. They're plasma wave ions resonating in the atmosphere of the planets, interacting with the solar wind, and it's causing these ions to vibrate, and they vibrate exactly within the range of human hearing. So Voyager 1 and 2 collected that information and sent it back. And what does it sound like? It sounds like dolphins and whales and birds and crickets and monks chanting and Tibetan bowls. It's a mind blower.
Yeah. Yes.
And that's what nature sounds speeded up and slowed down sound like.
Yep.
Right? Human voices speaking speeded up sound like birds, and birds speeded up sound like crickets. And crickets speeded up sound like dolphins, and dolphins slowed down sound like people singing. It's all the same kind of Jung's collective unconscious on a rubber blueprint.
Yep. Yes.
We're all one thing at different speeds and at different sizes.
Yeah.
It's all just one thing. So the deepest parts of the subconscious mind know this, and we can trick it. We can grab its attention with pattern recognition of these kinds of sounds. So those sounds are built into these meditation soundtracks. When you listen to the space sounds from NASA, you are in direct contact with a deep part of your unconscious mind that recognizes these sounds. It's pulling that part up in you. Very powerful stuff.
I remember beginning with
the place to start is the generic soundtracks, and then you can move on to that from there if you wish to, where you might make an appointment and come in and get something custom for you, but that's a trip and it's expensive and you've got to fly here.
Yeah. Well, I remember starting with your alpha wave system even after I did the theta, but I thought I would come back, and I remember listening to some of those sounds, and then my brain would just be like, that's okay. The ego, the mind, whatever, I just let go. And I went deeper and deeper and deeper into the sound current. And having had a lot of experiences with meditations up through that point, I was so amazed and not just blown away, because that's like a mind statement. It was more so like a calm experience where everything was back to normal for me after a very turbulent period of things going on, and I'm back there again after listening to your tracks like the Inner Mind off the Gamma CD. When we say CDs today, what we really mean is, it's somewhere off of our
soundtrack,
our player.
You can download them. You can buy
exactly.
them.
Yes. Yeah.
You can also get it on a digital player.
Right. And I was noticing that on your website. So that's personalized. It's built right into your lifestyle. Like taking that meditation track. That's what I was doing with yours. I had it on iPad Nano many years ago, and that thing was so small and delicate. There was no weight. There was no CD player, whirring away next to me.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's just amazing now, especially with the higher technology.
Welcome to the 21st century.
So I want to say thank you, Jeffrey, for your time today, the great detail that you've gone through, and maybe most of all to the work and the dedication that you've had to it and still have. And we say a collective thank you in a big way. We're all giving you a big hug right now.
Thank you very much. I'm feeling that hug. Thank you. I need that hug.
Yeah. And so in the background, we're playing a little bit of one of your audio CDs, and you and I will talk about which one it is. Intuitively, we're kind of like choosing it as a group as well. And that's not just entrainment. It's also a resonance of who we are as a civilization as we are entering this new field. This field is expanding as we speak.
It is.
That sentience.
It's a pithy time to be alive at a great turning point in our human history.
Yeah, this is like the new golden age, and many people may not see that. They're seeing the stressed out times, the political this and that, and the media. If we let go of all that, we unplug from the stuff that bothers us and plug into that which serves us or resonates within us, we will find that central soul theme again, that resonance. And
the birthing process is a stressful one.
Yeah,
but it has a good outcome.
Yeah, a good metaphor for many of us are going through. And some of our best friends, I'm sure you've got friends that are practitioners, are telling me and these are people who are very wise folks. They're maxing out. So if you're not a practitioner, if you've not been practicing meditation for some time, and you're stressed out, don't feel so bad, because those of us that have been doing this for a while, we still feel this excess amount of whatever. The photon belts, whatever, are just pummeling us in a good way, because it's lighting us up. It's activating us and forcing us to release the old that no longer serves us. So again, our sincere appreciation, Jeffrey, for all that you do and all the time you've shared with us today.
Thanks. Good interview. Thank you very much.
Sure. Aloha.